Hey there guys, I'm Long Lost Daylight and today I'm here to share my thoughts on Alex Garland's Annihilation as well as some art inspired by the film. I'm going to talk about some specific moments in detail, so this video will not be spoiler free, but since the film came out in 2018, I'm assuming that won't be a huge issue. Either way though, you have been warned. For those of you that aren't familiar with the film, Annihilation follows a group of scientists as they venture into a quarantined area nicknamed the Shimmer, where nature's begun to unravel and mutate following a meteor strike. The film has a pretty strong start, with the protagonist Lena being interrogated in a clean room. From the other side of a shield wall, strangers in surgical scrubs and masks stare in. You can't see their faces, and the image is warped by the plastic. Straight away, it's eerie and it's uncomfortable. That feeling continues in a flashback a few scenes later when Lena's weekend is interrupted by her husband Kane, who she believes is dead, comes home. It subverts that sort of dead spouse montage stereotype by having the dead spouse walking into the house and interrupting a flashback. It's really jarring, and as an audience it's like having the rug pulled out a little. Rather than being overtly scary, Annihilation sets the tone of an uneasy, eerie horror story. As the characters explore the Shimmer, long-distance camera shots feel agoraphobic and make everyone appear small and vulnerable on the screen. The environment is used as a source of discomfort as well. Sort of contrast between the vibrant surroundings of the Shimmer and the characters' dull military gear is quite discordant and uneasy, and abandoned and liminal spaces get incorporated to really heighten that feeling of discomfort. The visuals in the film are consistently stunning. Stuff like the shifting, colourful boundaries of the Shimmer and the so-called fungal horror scene, which you can see me drawing here, are equal parts mesmerising and terrifying. In particular, I really love the mutated bear scene. It's a moment in the film where the horror part of sci-fi horror really shines through and the biological horror element is made pretty brutally clear. I just really wish the lighting in the scene was changed and the screen time was a little longer. The animatronic for the fused bear skull is really cool and bodily terrifying, and honestly I think it deserves a chance to make a bigger impact on the audience. However, the visuals also where the film starts to fall apart. They seem to be aiming to maintain that jarring, uneasy feel from the opening by using strongly contrasting design choices, but being brutally honest, the changes are too large and too sudden. Uncomfortable bio-horror imagery like the bear, the crocodile and the worm-like mutated intestines we see in a video cam footage, they set a really clear visual tone, but it's undermined by more dainty, gentle imagery like the deer and flowering bushes. It just feels out of place in the context of the rest of the film, more like something from a fairy tale or Alice in Wonderland than something from a horror film. It just feels like this film has a commitment issue. It's trying to be a lot of different genres and use a lot of visual styles, but it doesn't invest enough energy or screen time to make them stick. Videos from the previous expedition are really effective when they are used, sort of a la found footage horror, but it's not frequent enough to be a consistent theme, and it just feels a little out of place with the rest of the film. Near the end, Lena reaches the lighthouse, the origin of the Shimmer, and climbs through a hole in the floor to reach the epicenter. The lighthouse itself really fits the main visual vibe of the film. It's bodily and organic, but after that it really falls apart. The visual design and soundtrack changes very suddenly. Don't get me wrong, the following scene is really cool and it's visually impressive, but it feels like the ending of a different film tacked on. The stylistic change is just too big, and for me it broke my immersion in the film. It's a shame. It's like the film doesn't have a consistent sense of direction visually or thematically. Because there is such an emphasis on visuals in the film, some of the character development gets sacrificed. All the audience really knows is their career field and a tragic events that's happened in their lives. You don't really get the chance to get to know them in terms of personality and motivations. Although it does help build atmosphere earlier in the film, the continued use of long distance shots unfortunately does distance you from the characters even further. It's really hard to connect with them and feel invested in their survival, which makes the stakes of the story feel a lot lower. There's some discussion around grief and self-destructive behaviour in the film, but the dialogue is very rushed and it comes across as clumsy, even insensitive. As well, there's not that much consideration into how characters' training and backgrounds would affect how they respond to situations. Anya, a paramedic, snaps and turns on the other characters due to the stress of the situation, despite presumably having extensive experience working under pressure. Other characters speculate earlier in the film that she might be a recovering alcoholic, but it's not really addressed enough or developed to feel like an explanation for her actions. Other parts of the film just don't really make sense. Nobody seems to have any issues with walking into a pool of still water containing a corpse covered in alien mould, despite that being an obviously terrible idea. They've been sent on an expedition to collect samples and data, so logically they'd have stuff like gloves or masks with them. This issue crops up again and again. If you're writing a film or telling a story, suspension of disbelief gives you a little bit of free rein over reality, to a certain extent. Genetics is introduced as an explanation for the strange sort of flora and fauna in the Shimmer really early on. This is a big risk to take because how believable the film is gets tied very tightly to the realism. Missing out on details or making large generalizations could impact how immersed the audience is and how much they enjoy the film. But it's actually worse than that. They get stuff wrong. Lena, who I'll remind you is a biologist, gets basic definitions wrong. After looking at a strange plant with sprouting multiple different flowers, she states it has to be the same species. That's not right. It's an individual organism. She doesn't know what the rest look like. By definition, a species refers to a group of organisms. She'd know this. And despite word for word using a fairly accurate definitions, Hox genes get misinterpreted pretty badly. To me, this feels like a huge shame because as well as making the film harder for me personally to enjoy by breaking the immersion, by getting stuff wrong, it just makes it look like the writers didn't bother to put in the research. It's disappointing. Obviously, I'm not saying the film needs to be entirely scientifically accurate. For one, the Shimmer isn't real, and most scientists I know are way funnier than the expedition team, but failing to do enough research to make the characters look competent is just sloppy. Throughout the film, the story cuts between the events of the expedition and Lena's interrogation after escaping. In the final scene, she's let go after her interrogation and visits Kane in his hospital room. As an audience, in an earlier scene, you see he's killed and replaced by a doppelganger from the Shimmer, and Lena sees this as well through a video recording. Watching her embrace something she knows isn't her husband and killed him and led to his death is so incredibly bittersweet and tragic. Up until you see both their eyes shimmer, the effect isn't as polished as the rest of the visuals in the film, and it honestly comes across as quite tacky. I think it's trying to be mysterious and add in sort of intrigue at the ending, but it overshoots and it feels like a low effort cliffhanger. It honestly cheapens the ending, and I think it would have been better without it. I hope this doesn't come across as all too negative. There really are a lot of things I enjoyed about the film, especially visually, and I was invested in the story in the first half. Honestly, it's pissing me off a bit. I want to like this film. It should have ticked a lot of boxes for me if it weren't for some of the execution issues. Really, it's a very ambitious film, and unfortunately some of the risks it took just didn't pay off. Although there's a handful of issues that made it less enjoyable for me personally, it's definitely still worth a watch. Overall, I'm going to rate Annihilation 6 out of 10 for quality and 5 for enjoyment. Honestly, films like this are exactly why I want to rate things in multiple ways. A large chunk of audiences just won't be bothered by the same things as me, and if you look online, a lot of people love this film. Ultimately, what I've talked about is mostly my opinion. If you found anything different, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. If you enjoyed the video and want to see more art or film talk in the future, consider subscribing. I hope you have a lovely day or night wherever you are, and I hope you can join me next time. See ya!